So welcome back from break. Tonight, by design, for our presenters on tonight, as we've been talking about connection, it's important for me to share a little bit about my connection with these three individuals. And I know I already introduced both Tiffany and Hilu, but in 2018, where I was working, the grant that I was on ended. So when that grant ended, I didn't have a job, y'all. And yeah, what am I going to do? So I said, I'm going to step out here and do my own thing. I really like this training thing. In order for us to be a core trainer, we teach some national curriculums, the main one being that from CCAR, which is the Connecticut Community of Addiction Recovery, who provides national trainings. We need to have at least 2 core trainers. So I called on Hilu, what we gonna do? And you know what, without hesitation, he jumped up and said, well, you got one, I'm with you. So I was able to use his credentials sort of to meet that requirement. And then for, now that we're out here, we don't have much money. But my sister got a grant, Tiffany Scott, for the Maryland Peer Advisory Council. And without a hesitation, she said, we're going to add some training into this grant. The grant was for advocacy, you all. But she said, you know what, we're going to advocate for more structured training within the recovery movement. And my selection is 3C. Now, we're just a brand new organization. I had a training history, but as a company, we hadn't trained nobody yet. But she signed on for, and I won't even, I'll go ahead and tell the amount. The amount started out with $75,000 for the grant, was increased to 100, and literally she says, I trust you with the process. So for the business side of impact and handling that money, she said, it's in your hands. I trust the receipts that you're coming through is right. She said, and I'm gonna go ahead and tell on her a little bit, Reverend Bell. She said, I don't even check them all the time, Tyrell. So it's great to have those friends who really, can trust you. And it's also great to be accountable. So on the flip side of that, you have to be accountable and reliable as well, that she can see that in me. And then last, I just want to talk a little bit about Reverend Bell, because when I started, again, I came from an organization where the leadership had assured me that you step out there, we're going to be there to support you. Literally a few days before I went to leave, the person who was in charge at that time, said, well, I don't know what you're going to do, but I hope that you have enough, backing. And I didn't say, but my thought was, well, didn't you say you were going to support me and back me? But like that conversation never happened. But here is Reverend Bell, who had attended some trainings of ours. At that point, didn't know me as well as she knows me now, said, well, what we will do is that we will take LTC under our wing. So the first $1,000, and it was some odd dollars out there for you to get the trade name, we're going to pay for it. When it came time for us to get registered with the certification board, LTC paid for it. And she did these things without asking for a dime from the first day that they paid to now, never having made a request, never having held over my head. Well, when you were beginning, I did this, that, and the other. And on top of all of that, well, I am operating out of my house now, but that's because of COVID. Beautiful office space. She said, we're not doing anything with that 3rd floor in their office building right now so that the space is yours. And when I tell you again, just that envelopment of love, Reverend Bell, I'll always appreciate you for. Helu for stepping in, and Tiffany just for trusting me as we go through this process together. So I want you all to know that I have, again, that personal connection with these individuals who are sharing tonight. And then on tomorrow night, we're going to talk about them as well. But yeah, just having that connection and having that family, those friends who can support and love on us, I say is marvelous. It has helped me in my process. So now I'll read the formal introduction that we have here for Reverend Bell, and then I will turn it over to her so that she'll have adequate time to share with you tonight. So Reverend Bell Leonard is the founder and executive director of the Light of Truth Center, LTC. LTC has been providing recovery services for over 20 years. Under her superior leadership, Reverend Bell has developed LTC into a full-service recovery organization that includes multi-level supportive housing options, treatment services, recovery educational programs, wellness programs, training, and meeting space facilities. She is a successful graduate of the Weinberg Fellows Program, a certified recovery trainer and specialist, and former Maryland certified volunteer with the Maryland Correctional Institute for Women. Please lend your ears for our keynote on tonight in the person of Reverend Bell Leonard. Welcome, Reverend Bell.
Thank you, everyone. And what an honor it is to be here tonight with all of you. I am absolutely so grateful. I want to thank the organization for thinking of me and for allowing me to share my experiences, my hopes, and my strengths with you this evening. We get to talk real talk about recovery. And anybody that knows me knows that I love recovery and I love to talk about recovery. I'm in long-term recovery. And so it is near and dear to my heart, especially when you have walked on the other side of midnight and God brings you out of the darkness into the light. It is an honor and a blessing. I'm humbled to be able to be here and share with you. One of the things that I want to talk about with recovery and make it very clear is that recovery is not a moral dilemma. It is absolutely not a moral failing, and it is not a matter of willpower. And so there are many conversations surrounding addiction, active addiction, overdose. There are few conversations that surround recovery. And so let's talk a little bit about that tonight and why that happens and how important that is, especially for the family. We do recover, and recovery is in fact possible. And so one of the things as a community is inundated with information about overdose and inundated with information about active addiction and substance use disorder. And on the flip side of that, there's very little information really for the family and the community around recovery. We were in a town hall meeting just recently, and we watched a presentation. It was probably about maybe 20 minutes, 25 minutes. And all of the information presented was about overdose, the various types of drugs that were being used, how they were being used, numbers referencing 2019 and 2020. 21, we're at the highest level ever of overdose. However, there was little information about recovery or solutions directed towards recovery. And so it is time for us to begin to really have those kinds of conversations. First off, the family and the general community. If we are not providing information about recovery, the possibility of recovery, then it is hard for the community to accept and acknowledge and recognize that recovery is possible. For many, many years, movies, various medias, songs, writings have always talked about the addict or the alcoholic in a way that has created a wall of stigma. And so for those of us who are in long-term recovery, not only do we have to manage our own recovery, but we also have to manage the stigma associated with recovery. I'm so glad to see this type of conference, and especially coming from the church, because it has been my feeling for a while that the church has been quiet in this whole scenario. Always, it has been the church in our communities, it has always been the church that has been the spearhead of any movement. It has always been the church that has been the basis of our community development and our community moving forward. So to have a conference, a church conference that's talking about recovery, I am really, really encouraged. Now, there are a couple of conversations around addiction and active addiction. There's a conversation that believes that addiction is a dis-ease. There's a conversation that believes that addiction is a neuroadaptive disorder. And there is yet another conversation that we rarely hear or people rarely speak of, and that is addiction as a soul's unfoldment, a soul's journey. For me, addiction clearly has been a soul's unfoldment. Everything that I do, everything that I am, all of my life and all of my affairs have been born and spearheaded out of this experience we call addiction. So let me talk to you a little bit about why they can say that addiction is a disease. A disease is developed by a team of medical professionals who have a prognosis and a diagnosis. And so you have to be able to demonstrate in a group of people that they have similar symptoms, that they have similar behaviors, and that they have similar outcomes. And if that can be proved in multiple groups of people in multiple ways, then the medical community then decides and acknowledges that as a dis-ease. A neuroadaptive disorder is about the way the brain functions and the way we think. And so as we think, the brain fires off a little spark, and that spark ignites and touches with another spark within a brain, and an idea, a thought form is then developed. If we have a repetitive thought form, that then creates what we call an addiction. And you can see that it is not simply with a drug or with alcohols. It can be with food, it can be with shopping, it can be many things. It's the repetitive thought. I liken it to a field. And you know how you have a grassy field and people begin to walk across that lawn or walk across that field, and then there's the brown spot that then begins to develop from the repetitive walking back and forth, walking back and forth. Addiction is very much like that in the brain. And so just like with the field and just like the grass, the only way to heal it is to stop walking through it. And so for those of us who have addictions, it's the same way. The only thing to begin to heal that brain, that part of our brain, is abstinence, to stop using. However, abstinence is not recovery. Abstinence is simply the tip of the iceberg. It is the very beginning of the recovery process. Because when we take a look at the recovery process. The recovery process, and I'm going to make it personal for me, is a change of ideas, a change of attitude, a change of perspective, which then brings about a change of behavior. And so if I stop using and do nothing, I still have a challenge. I still have a challenge. So that real growth, that real change, that coming into, because addiction is threefold. It's not one, it's threefold. It's mind, body, and spirit. And so each portion, each part of addiction must be addressed in order for the whole person to be healed. The body has to be addressed, abstinence. The mind has to be addressed, information about recovery and learning about the disease of addiction. And then the spirit. There's a whole unfoldment. There's many of us, and I'm a 12-stepper, so I'm going to talk about that. I'm a 12-stepper. So in the 12-step process, there are spiritual principles associated with the step. With each step, there's a spiritual principle associated with it. And so as you work the step, you learn how to implement the spiritual principle in your life. That's what changes you. Using the principles of spirit, using the principles of the divine to then develop and change and alter your life, your thinking, your behavior. For families, it is very difficult to distinguish the difference between addictive behavior and addiction. I'll say that again. Very difficult for the family and the community in general to distinguish between addictive behavior and addiction. Addictive behavior is those behaviors that we develop over a period of time in order to support active addiction. All of the manipulation, all of the maneuvering, all of the things that happen day to day, those are addictive behaviors that are developed over a period of time. The disease of addiction is a whole different thing. That's a whole different thing. And so one of the things that I ask families to do, I talk to a lot of families, and one of the things I ask them to do is educate yourself about recovery. Take the time to educate yourself about recovery. Learn about recovery. There is no way you can support your loved one. There is no way that you can understand what your loved one is going through if you don't understand the disease of addiction and if you don't recognize that there is hope for recovery. Often when we talk about recovery and we talk about change, we talk about the stages of change, but there are also stages of recovery. Just like there are 5 stages of change, there are also 5 stages of recovery. And so as you begin to learn about recovery and learn the stages of recovery, those that we love and those that we support, we can identify what stage of recovery they're in and what they're going through. Those of us who provide services, when we are training, one of the things that we usually say in training is make sure that whatever you provide is stage appropriate. Don't talk to a person with 3 months clean as you would talk to someone that has 1 year clean or 2 years clean, because they don't know what you're talking about.